Welcome to the Dealer Managed Inventory video. This video is intended just to introduce it, walk through how it operates. It's not intended to cover every particular option, but just to give you a general feel for how it works. We will be covering things like adding a new item, deleting items, importing items, and also showing how you can print your own labels, either a barcoded label or a not barcoded label. First thing we'll do is we'll log in. I'll click on my quick link, log into my test shop, my antique mall, click on my inventory link, and right now I have no inventory. I could either hit the plus key button on the toolbar down here and add an item, and I'll just say test item, and I'll say I have one and it's $2. Next, I actually do have some data that I would like to import, and that's in a Google Sheet, which is the GoAntiquing standard template, which is available at goantiquing.net/ga-inventory-sheet.asp, and that will be a link provided on this page. You do have to make a copy of the sheet to be able to work on it. You can't use my template. You create your own copy of it, then work on it, and then import it. But really, you might say, well, why would I want to import it when you have a tool where I can just add it? Well, you're welcome to just add items individually and manage them here. But sometimes, as I said, you may have inventory already in another source you just want to bring in rapidly in bulk. So I'll go ahead and do that. What we will do is paste data into this first window. And the columns have to be expected columns with expected column headers, such as dealer ID, SKU, item ID, description, price, cost, quantity, label quantity, etc. Many of these are optional. What are required, though, are dealer ID and item ID. Everything else is optional. Of course, it'd be beneficial to provide description, price, and quantity, but the minimum is dealer ID and item ID. So I'll go over to my Google Sheet, and I'm going to go ahead and select the data I want to import, which I have data all the way over to the category 2 column. I'll just drag the mouse down to the bottom until I've selected all of the columns of interest, pressing Control C or right click copy, and then flip back over to the import screen, and I'm just going to paste. Now, you could make a mistake in beginning editing this because it is an editable box, but you really just want to hit the import button. And once you import, because this is going to be a important action, you have to confirm what you want to do by typing in the word import and clicking OK. There were some errors that I intentionally put into the data. For example, there's a dealer SS. That is not my dealer ID. My dealer ID is JS1. I also duplicated 2 rows of data because one of the common things that people often do is accidentally maybe, or not seeing it, that they've used the same item ID for multiple different things. It's very important to understand the concept that the item ID needs to be unique to a given thing. If you sell all of a given thing and want to reuse that ID, we actually recommend you think about just creating a new ID, because historically, reports can be run at the shop to bring up information about a particular item ID, and you wouldn't want numbers to be confused with maybe the item ID was a lamp one day and maybe it was a furniture complete set table and chairs with much different pricing. So again, encourage, always keep the item ID unique to a particular thing. So at this point, we do have our inventory all imported, and all I need to do is basically tell it to show everything, because right now it's filtering just based on all, but we haven't refreshed the screen. So I just hit the F5 key to refresh the screen, and we can see all the information here now. All right, so what next? Well, first I'm going to go ahead and close the import tool because I don't need that open any longer. And just a quick run through the Internet Gateway inventory options here. You have the ability to show or hide dates, status column, cost, category, discount, supplier, and images. Any of those, as they turn on or off, will change how it looks. Go back into the edit mode, and you can see that we have it in a different mode. Now there's also the easy interface. When we go to the easy interface, By default, it just shows the simple columns, and you don't have the option to change which columns. This is intended to be just something quick that if you don't want all the fancy options, you can just hide all that. I'll go back to advanced, and I'll go ahead and turn off the supplier because I still like the clean appearance of one row per item in a very small space. I can see a lot of information. You can change the casing, leave it as is. We can make it all proper casing where it's initial caps per word or force uppercase on everything. We can filter based on different criterias, whether the items are checked or not. And by the way, this column over here, the column header with the checkbox on it, if you click that, that's a quick way to uncheck everything or recheck everything. Sorting, you can sort by many different criteria. This is just a way to find your items. Then we get to labels. There are two basic types of labels, sheet labels and roll labels. Sheet labels are probably the most common thing that many people use because you can just go to an Office Depot and you can print them off on your regular printer at home. But you may decide to go and buy a roll label somewhere. But the sizes that I have are limited. Basically 1 inch by 1 inch. Now the 1.125 size is the measure of the label paper, meaning from left to right and perforation to perforation. So sometimes they are actually just shown as being 1 inch by 1 inch when you go buy them, or 2 inch by 1 inch, or 2 inch by half an inch. It all depends upon how they are marked by the supplier that makes them and sells them. Best thing to do would be to try to find one that is as close to what I have listed as possible. The fallback are Avery because they're very standard. With all the different types of labels, you have different types of barcodes it can print. There's the option to do a QR code, which is a two-dimensional representation of the item ID and dealer ID. There's a proprietary QRI code. Now look at that little QR code over here when I select QRI that gets larger because we're actually encoding all the information about the item, not just the dealer ID and item ID, but also the price and the description. That means that QRI barcodes can stand alone. They don't need to actually be downloaded to the shop. You could stick a whole bunch of stuff on items and take it to the shop and they could sell it that day even if they don't sync the database. With the Avery labels, you might also want to skip some rows of labels that you've already previously used on a sheet of paper. Let's take a look at how this looks in preview. And under Windows, you would just hit Control P to then print. And you'd probably want to test one sheet before you dedicate 60 sheets of labels to something that might need a little bit of alignment in your printer. You know, this has been a very quick walkthrough of the system, but hopefully it's enough to get you started. And there's also this little help thing. I think I showed that at the beginning of the video, but here it is again. You can just go through here and read some of the help information. It may be helpful for you to walk through these screens. Thanks for your attention.